All right. Another hot take for you here. I know. I'm going to get some more backlash on this one. I don't care. Essentially, let me just say from the beginning, I love the Batman. The new one, Matt Reeves did an incredible job, and I also think that the cast was fantastic. Michael Giacchino as well. Oh my God, I was already a Giacchino fan, but man, he he clearly took some inspiration from John Williams' Imperial March for the new Batman theme. But overall, just a wonderful movie, incredibly well done, and also. I've heard others say this as well, and Chris Nolan mentioned it in an interview as well. That Batman is one of those characters really ripe for interpretation. It's really a diverse range of villains and characters, but also Batman himself. There's so many different ways to do it, whether it's the Dark Knight, whether it's the Tim Burton Batman, or even you have Lego Batman, which isn't even really, in the same genre, even close. It's animated, it's Lego, and yet I really loved Lego Batman. I thought Will Arnett did a great job with that as well. So overall, it's great to have different interpretations of this character. I think people still love seeing the Batman on the big screen. But the debate I kind of wanted to dive into today is a lot of people have told me that this is their favorite Batman implementation. They just love the vampire bat, as I call him, a Batman with such a very different approach to Bruce Wayne. I feel like the Bruce Wayne approach is kind of swept under the rug. Well, not necessarily swept under the rug. I don't mean to say he did a bad Bruce Wayne, but I think a lot of people maybe looked at this Batman as almost the most grounded. Not almost, yeah, no, really, definitely. He is like barely able to fly. And the Batmobile doesn't seem like a giant tank. It's not something he just bought off of a military contract. It's something that looks like one guy really just modified a vehicle himself to his liking. Everything feels very handmade, and it doesn't feel just like, oh, money can buy everything that this guy needs. It's a lot more gritty. It's a lot more, if there was really a rich billionaire, a kid that was dressing up as a bat to fight crime, he would probably be a recluse. He would probably not have that much of a social presence in the public eye. And he would probably look like kind of a creep, with his hair down and his eyes kind of dreary, and he's just kind of a quiet nobody. So if you're going for believable, then I would say, yeah, this one is probably more in the right direction. And I've had people tell me they prefer this implementation of Batman to the Dark Knight trilogy, and I don't disrespect that. I don't think that's a wrong conclusion by any means. It's all movies; it's all just personal preference. But I have my own reasons basically as to why I still prefer the Chris Nolan Batman trilogy to this one, and it's kind of unfair because there's only been one of these Batman. There's more to come, so my answer may change over time. Whereas the Christian Bale Batman had three movies, of course, so there's a bit more time to flesh out the character. So maybe I should just be comparing this to Batman Begins, but even so, I think the fundamental difference between Matt Reeves Batman and Chris Nolan Batman is this one, rightfully given the name, The Batman, is much more focused on Batman as a character, not so much Bruce Wayne. I would say like it felt like probably 60 to 70% of the movie he's wearing the mask. He's not Bruce Wayne essentially. That's how Chris Nolan looks at it. Batman and Bruce Wayne are almost entirely different characters essentially, so that's how I'm looking at it here. And I feel like the Chris Nolan films were more the opposite. Very little Batman, lots of Bruce Wayne development, especially in Batman Begins. Batman doesn't even really show up until like after an hour into the movie. There's so much build, there's so much setup, there's so much origin. This doesn't really go into origins, how he became who he is. It kind of already starts with him as Batman, which was fine, I think, for as much content. This is the longest Batman movie ever. You kind of don't want to waste too much time on the origins because we kind of all know that story. We've gone through it so many times. I almost completely forgot the Ben Affleck Batman was a thing, to be honest with you. But Chris Nolan's approach, while I agree, is probably not as realistic. I think made it more believable because Bruce Wayne as a character was more digestible slash I don't know if you could say relatable per se, but I felt like he was a more three-dimensional character, and the only reason I take issue with the new, I don't really have issue with the new Batman, but my difference is it's a guy dressed up as a bat, right? This is a comic book character. How real can you really get it? You still have to abide by the laws of the comic book. Okay, Riddler has to put question marks on things. The Penguin has to be kind of fat and look a little weird. And the Joker has to be crazy and laugh. Okay, you've got certain parameters that for a comic book film you have to stick to. So because it's a comic book, which is, disconnected from reality, this one put the bigger emphasis on the comic book characters and did the comic book characters in the most realistic way possible. The Dark Knight trilogy, I almost feel like was distancing itself from the comic book characters as much as possible so that the personality of Bruce Wayne is what you would be invested in. He would be the most believable as someone who cares for his loved ones, of course, wants to protect them, wants the city to be a better place, and is willing to stand by his ethics, his morals, and he won't stray from them too much. Whereas this, it feels like Batman, adrenaline junkie, pumping in liquids to make sure he can fight the last fight and just keep punching guys over and over and over again. Whereas Bruce Wayne, as the Christian Bale character, I feel like you really get to know him as not Batman, seeing his uprising, seeing the way he speaks to Alfred and reminisces on his parents and what they stood for and how he wants to stand for more. So there's other things you could compare, like chase sequences and action scenes, which, in my opinion, both directors did an amazing job. The fight scenes in this were fantastic. The audio engineering as well, especially for the Batmobile, the sound design was amazing. And then you couple that with the beautiful score from Michael Giacchino. Yeah, you can't really go wrong with either of these pictures. But Hans Zimmer also, in my opinion, captured a very iconic, very recognizable, personally my favorite soundtrack of all time, score with themes that match up with the characters very well. And Giacchino, to his credit, still does that. But I definitely felt more depth to the human being element. The not a guy dressed as a bat fighting crime, but the guy motivated by wanting there to be hope for the city and wanting to do good, and especially in the Dark Knight, which is, again, a bit unfair because there's 3 of the Dark Knight trilogy and there's only 1 of this. But still, you get the development of there being a shot of redemption with Harvey Dent and having that redemption fall, and of course Bruce Wayne accepting, I'm whatever Gotham needs me to be. I can take the fall. I can take the credit for those horrible things because Batman doesn't care about, whether or not the public likes him or anything. He's just trying to prove that there is this good out there. And this Batman, to me, felt a lot more admitting that Gotham has already fallen. Like there isn't that much to save, and he's just kind of navigating this ocean of villains and ocean of corruption, and there's not really much left to be done. He's just kind of looking out for the few remaining loved ones he has. So it's a bit more defeatist attitude, it feels like. Maybe you disagree. Feel free to let me know if you do. But it definitely felt fundamentally like the big difference is this one is all about the Batman, and the Dark Knight trilogy is all about Bruce Wayne. And that carries into the Dark Knight Rises. That whole film, there's barely any Batman in it. It's all about him rising back to become Batman. But the the appreciation I have for those films is more so the journey the character goes through to get to the Batman, which the reason I find that more enjoyable and more intriguing is because, like I said, you can only take Batman as a character so seriously. It's a guy dressed as a bat. He's got these ears and he's got the costume, and eventually these films have to come back to the comic book regulation of like, okay, here's the villains you can work with, and he's got to wear a cape, and he's got to have the batarang and the belt and the grappling gun and all that. So that stuff is when the kids are entertained. Essentially, you've got the music, you've got the fight scenes, and yeah, it's fun to punch and punch. And yeah, that's this cool, exciting chase sequence and stuff. And yeah, even us adults and us guys enjoy that stuff. But I think I still have that appreciation more so for the Dark Knight trilogy because it was more character driven. It was and Bruce Wayne driven, I should say specifically. This is still very character driven. It's just more focused on the Batman, who is occasionally Bruce Wayne, whereas Chris Nolan is Bruce Wayne, who is occasionally Batman. I find the Bruce Wayne, who is occasionally Batman, more interesting from a screenwriting perspective, more so than just great detective. But I completely understand, based on what the Batman fan base came from. Like this is certainly enjoyable, and I would absolutely love to watch this again and again. I still listen to the music very, very regularly from the Matt Reeves Batman, and I thought it was well acted, well casted, great casting choice, and they just, you could tell there was a lot of passion behind this. And honestly, based on the interviews I've seen, I think that there's a mutual respect. Chris Nolan said very nice things about it. Matt Reeves had nothing but respect for Chris Nolan in the Batman trilogy. So I know that it's kind of divisive to try to compare the two, but the truth is that I'm very grateful that they did something different when it came to portrayal of characters, and in this case it was more emphasis on the Batman and less emphasis on Bruce Wayne. I thought, that's cool. We haven't really had an implementation like that before, especially with today's times, and the style of cinematography, of course, of how Gotham was portrayed felt very different than what we'd had previously. So maybe my answer will change over time if they dive maybe a bit more into Bruce Wayne as a character in the future films and give him a bit more dimensions instead of just, quiet, creepy kid in the back with the dark shaded hair. Oh, don't look at me, I don't want much attention, that kind of thing. It's still a really good movie, but that's why it didn't surpass the quality of the Dark Knight trilogy to me. And I think another factor, which is kind of unfair, maybe it's worth considering, is the context of what Chris Nolan brought to the cinematic Batman portrayal. When you think about the movie, the last Batman movie before Batman Begins was Batman and Robin. Okay, like, it was a joke. It was so cheesy. It was horrible. Not that many people liked it. I'm pretty sure it was like a critical flop. It was just like, who was it? Joe Schumacher. The director was just like, it's a comic book movie. Don't take it too seriously. It was just like, who cares? It's just Batman and Robin, whatever. It was just so silly. And Chris Nolan turned it into such a more grounded, gritty, like, he understood the fan base, like, of Batman not being this, whoa, I need the Bat credit card and I'm gonna have my Bat ice skates and stuff. He took it very, very seriously not too long after Batman and Robin came out, and made it a much more believable, hero's journey. That is taken a lot more seriously by its audience, and I think that's why it resonated with people. So Chris Nolan kind of established how seriously and how gritty and how violent, to a certain extent, a Batman film could be. So this one, I do think, takes Batman a lot more. Matt Reeves' Batman does take it a lot more seriously than, like, the Ben Affleck Batman from the Snyderverse, which, never really got Ben Affleck never really got his own Batman movie. And, he was serious and gritty and dark and stuff. But I have to give a little bit of credit to Chris Nolan for the context of what Batman had turned into as a character at the time, compared to okay, we know Batman can be dark and violent and gritty and a movie that feels almost rated R. So Matt Reeves is doing another iteration of that, which he did very well, and I applaud him for. And again, it was a fantastic film, but it does feel like less of a noticeable step change in style. It's there. It's a very different style of film from the Dark Knight trilogy, but it's less of a drastic shift in tone, in direction than the Dark Knight trilogy was relative to the Batman and Robin era, where they're recasting Batman left and right. Not to mention they got Christian Bale to stick around over the course of 3 movies. They feel very coherent and like a singular vision. Chris Nolan had pretty pretty much full control over that trilogy end to end. You don't really feel that way with the Ben Affleck Batman. He's like, oh, now he's dark and grimsy. Now he's kind of funny. Now he kind of shows up here and there. So I hope Matt Reeves gets to continue maintaining control over time as this film series continues, because I know they're making another one. But while I appreciate both, I hope that kind of gave you perspective on why I think the Dark Knight trilogy is still a bit more. I don't know. I have a higher appreciation for it. I don't want to say timeless. They're both very timeless series. Maybe some people look at the Chris Nolan trilogy and think of it as more cheesy, but I guess I gotta boil it down to the simple wording I'm choosing. I like it more. I like the Dark Knight trilogy more than this direction. But again, it's kind of unfair. There's only one movie. That might change. But what do you guys prefer? What do you think is more enjoyable? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Have an excellent rest of your day.